Coaching in Session.
Your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
Let me ask you a serious question. Are you living your best life today? Now, I understand you might be a work in progress right now, and I understand you might be on your way to that best life that you are currently giving yourself, because I even remember when I was young and I thought about when, I got all this money, I would buy this house in Weston, is like a rich part of Connecticut or Easton. And I was like, I'm going to buy this $1 million home and I was going to live there by myself with my dog and maybe get a girlfriend or something. And that's going to be my life. I was secluded from the stimulus of the outside world. I was excluding my family in a sense. I was just saying, what did I want? Now, today, we fast forward, my idea of a good life does not only involve me, it involves the people that I love dearly, my parents, my siblings, my nieces, like all of these people that weren't there when I was still young, right? So through the years, I realized that there was something more happening. Everything that I had thought at once was now obsolete. Maybe we can think of it in the sense of like how at one point MP3 players were so big, but now our phone can do everything. Maybe at some point we all had our DVD collections or our CD collections. And I know I'm dating myself because I know the new generation might not even know what a VHS is or a DVD is or what a CD is or how to burn a CD. Like literally, like I think if you ask like someone from Generation Alpha, like, hey, can you burn this CD? They'll get a lighter and start like lighting the CD on fire. And it might sound crazy, but in 20 years, we have made tremendous strides in technology. But then we have also made like tremendous strides in the world as well. The same money that was maybe back in the 2000s is very different than the money of today, through inflation, through, price hikes, through just acclimating to this is what things cost. Because you could buy, a Rolex at in the beginning for, a couple $100, $400. And now you're going to be spending, depending on the brand, thousands of dollars, maybe $50,000 to get a specific one. Now, you don't have to just say life is a watch or life is a car or life is a house, because even homes are so much more, because you could have bought a home for maybe $100,000 and now your home is worth $1 million. And you might say, how did this happen? And as time goes, property is going to increase and, things are going to change. But then also the mindsets are going to shift and change too, because the home that you once created for yourself, maybe for your family, maybe it's too small now. Maybe it's too big now, right? Some things are going to change. I think of like people who are hitting retirement age and they have built a 5-bedroom home. Now there's no kids in the house. There's no grandkids. And they're like, this home is too much. It's too big. Like, why are we spending the money for the AC or the heat? Maybe things are breaking. You always have to repair things. You have all these empty rooms and you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose to keep this home? And they say, let's downsize. Let's get, like a small 1,500 square foot home. This is exactly what I need. Now, in the beginning, you might want that 4,500 square foot mansion. And you might say, that's a dream of mine. But then, maybe at some point you say, you know what, this home is too much. We could look at the Mike Tyson mansion and how Mike Tyson built his mansion. Then, of course, he got rid of it, and then 50 Cent got it. And then now he doesn't want it. And he gave it away to the, his foundation and, his G Unit Foundation because of a tax break. His realtor was upset because he was going to get a nice commission, but he didn't get any commission because the house never sold for money. So when you just give it away to a foundation, sorry, realtor, you're not going to get any money. Now, of course, maybe you might have gave him a little money to line his pockets for his help, but wasn't what he was expecting. And sometimes in life, we don't get exactly what we are expecting. Sometimes good things can happen that we least expect, and sometimes bad things can happen that we would least expect. Like think of a car accident. I don't anticipate people are going to say, okay, let me get in my car and let me get in an accident. Most people say, okay, let me get in my car and let me go to work, right? So when something bad happens in their life, a hiccup, we talked about that before, we start to say, dang, my day is not going on as it should go on. But then we can just not look at the day. We can look at the weeks. We can look at the months. We can even look at half the year, because today we can say we are halfway through the year, all right, respectively. And I wrote this article, Reflections at the Halfway Point, Navigating the Ups and Downs of the Year So Far. Now, this article is split into two parts. It's split into the part where we look back at the past and we can say, okay, this is where we went wrong. This is, or these are areas where we can make some changes. And then we look at the future and we can say, okay, this is where I'm heading. This is the trajectory. These are the goals. And so there's two aspects to it. But let's look at the former first. The former is, where have we been this past 6 months? Have we been showing up? Let's look at the beginning of the year, right? Maybe you're a person who sent some New Year's goals, some New Year's resolutions. Let's pay attention to those first. Are you still on track? Are you still doing them? Are you going to the gym religiously? Are you following your diet? Are you still communicating with your spouse or your family members that you said you were going to do? Are you doing the job hunts or the career development that you said you need? So we can look at all of the things that we might have set an intention toward. Are we still giving some focus to it? Now, I can say for 60% of the people that have given themselves intention are not going to be following through with that. And that's quite a lot of people, over half. You might ask, well, why are so many people not following through with what they have intended to? Because most of the things that they're intending to are good, are going to be things that bring about some level of goodness in their life, whether it be better physical or mental or spiritual health. And you have to ask yourself, who in the world wouldn't want a better life? Well, it's not so much that people don't want a better life. It's just that the idea of change can be complex. People don't necessarily dive into change because they're all 100% gun ho for change, right? Some people can. People who change, they change for a specific reason. If you're a guy and like your high school sweetheart breaks up with you, head to the gym. You are going to get the change that you want, right? You can use that heartbreak as fuel in a sense for you to say, I'm going to make some change. Now, we're not always going to get broken up with. We're not going to always get a divorce. We're not always going to lose someone in our life. Of course, that could be you, right? Depending on, but not everyone's going to have these moments where that or are going to jolt them awake, saying, hey, pay attention to what's happening right now. If you don't have those moments, what are you doing about it, right? Because now you are just left to your own devices. Are you paying attention? And most people are not. Most people are just kind of going through the flow of the week. They are, oh my goodness, it's Monday and Tuesday. I can't believe it's Wednesday, hump day. Thursday, just one more day until the weekend, right? And Friday is here. Thank God it's Friday. Saturday comes. Oh my goodness, tomorrow's Sunday. Sunday, oh my God, tomorrow's Monday. I have to go to work tomorrow. So literally, you're in this constant loop of living day to day, but it's not a good day to day. An anticipation of the negativities that you have to deal with, going to work perhaps. Some people might say, I love going to work. Great. Some people might say, I'm so happy for my birthday down the road. Wonderful, right? But are you paying attention all the way up to that date? Are you paying attention to your birthday? Not just on your birthday, but to your birthday, right? It is easy for us to give ourselves a goal, a destination, and to focus only on the goal. But it's not only about the goal, it's about the journey. And so the journey so far, right? The past 6 months, where has that journey led you? Can you get a piece of paper? Can you say, these are the things that I'm better at than the day I started on January 1st, 2025? Or maybe it's a different year depending on when you're listening to this podcast, because the podcast is timeless in a sense. So you are now faced with this idea of, okay, did I make any progress? Did I make any moves? Did I make some changes? Are they good? Are they positive? Or are they not good and bad, negative, right? Are they debilitating? Are they depriving me of things? And we can go down the list of, what, we have been doing and what we haven't been doing. And it could be a good, I guess you can say, lesson for you. But what I find when we do that with many of my clients is we have a hard time, taking accountability for the things that we don't do. So if you're not maybe showing up to the gym, or if you're not showing up with your family, or if you're not showing up in your work, or sending emails or calls, or doing your social media stuff, or e-commerce, or Amazon stores, or writing books, and I mean, we can go down the list of things that people do, right? But they're not doing what they should be doing. And so to give some intention to that, it can be heartbreaking in a sense. And so you have to be careful with how you speak to people when, or at least me, when I'm coaching people through what they haven't been doing. Because because the statistics show you need 3 positives for every 1 negative. So one of the things you could be doing without any type of coaching, of course, is to look at the positive things you have done. And let's figure out how many positives we can get on a piece of paper. So let's say you get 9 positive things that you have been consistent with, that you have become disciplined in, and now you have 9 wonderful things, right? Well, guess what? Now we can find 3 negative things. And let's find the most negative ones, right? We've picked the 3 biggest negatives that if we can change those 3 negatives, we are going to like surpass those 9 positives, right? Now, when we look at those negatives, we figure out plans for them, of course. But maybe you didn't get 9, right? Maybe you got 3. So we can only look at 1 negative, right? So we just look at 1 negative and then we work on that 1 negative, right? Hopefully the biggest one. When I say the biggest one, it is ideal, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to focus on the biggest one. Some people have a different mindset. You got to know your clients, right? So I don't know you, specifically without speaking with you for quite a bit. Probably have to know you for maybe a month in order for me to say I know who you are as a person. Some people, they operate on the negatives where they're like, okay, these negatives are helping me. Some people only operate on the positive where the positives help them. And so you need to figure out which type of person are you? Are you a person that can look at the positive and say, now I'm motivated? Or can you look at the negatives and say, whoa, I need to make some changes? So it just depends on what type of person you are there. Because if you are a person that can operate in the negative, great. Like for me, I can operate in the negative. When my coaches come yell at me, I go, you're 100% right. I should have been doing this and I haven't been, right? And so I'm going to basically set an intention and I'm going to say, okay, this is what I'm planning on doing. And if you can help me, that would be wonderful. And helping doesn't necessarily mean I want you to do the work for me. It means, just checking in on these specific days to make sure I did it. And I just make it so simple, stupid for me to do the things that I'm not doing. So if I'm supposed to be doing a call, if I'm supposed to be doing a webinar or something, I just say, well, I got to do it, right? Put it on my Google calendars and I say, okay, it's time to do it. And then I also look at, you know, the benefit of me doing it, right? Some things are not going to bring about a benefit today, of course, right? Maybe the podcast episode might not bring about, clients for, 3 to 4 episodes because typically people are going to listen to a couple episodes and they're going to figure out, do they want to work with me? Now, the podcast, again, is a value proposition for people, right? They can listen to the podcast, they can get coaching just by listening to the podcast. And one of the reasons why I made the podcast was for people who are not able to afford coaching. I talked about it. I think about like high school kids, boys and girls, and they're looking for some level of guidance. They can tune into the podcast and they can say, okay, I'm listening to this. This makes sense to me, right? I'm learning from wisdom, maybe some knowledge. And then you can figure out what you want to keep and what you don't want to keep. Not every episode is for everybody, right? Because you might be really good at health and fitness. And if I have a health and fitness podcast episode, that episode is probably not for you, right? Because it might be too basic. You might be beyond it. And it's so funny. Sometimes, guests will come on if they listen to the podcast or not. It helps, but then there's so many episodes. So I don't expect people to listen to every single episode before they come on as a guest. It's always interesting when they're explaining things to me and they're like, does that make sense? And I'm like, it's not about does it make sense to me? You're speaking to the audience, right? This is your classroom in a sense. You're speaking to the class. We're all listening. Are you telling us something that we need to know? Right? It's not about do we understand it quite yet. It's about what we can gather and then what we can ask when the conversation is over. That's when you would reach out to someone and saying, hey, you said this on coaching in session, like, what's your take on this? Or, you would say, you're operating in this mindset and I'm very similar to you, but I find I'm doing this more than I'm doing that, meaning I'm doing the negatives more than I'm doing the things that are the positive. So then maybe they say, you know what, I have dealt with that too. And this was what worked for me. And maybe what they do works for them and maybe it'll work for you, but maybe you need to figure out something specific that works for you. And so that's why there's so many coaches. That's why there's so many episodes. You figure out what works for you. And then we look at the second half for the aspect of this article, the reflections of the past year. We can look at all the things we did or didn't do, and we can get inspired or we can kind of fall into like a depression state saying, oh my goodness, like I didn't do all these things. And oh my goodness, we have wasted a year. We can be pessimistic as much as we can or want. But if we can just say, you know what, it's not only about that negative side anymore. We can say, I'm going to focus on what I can accomplish. And that could be the next 6 months right here. So we can get a piece of paper today. We can write down some intentions, some goals that we would like to uphold. We can look at the positive things that we have been doing and continue to do them. We can focus on maybe the negatives that are going to be appropriate to the number of the positives. Again, the 3-to-1 ratio. You can say, okay, this is where I'm planning on being. And we can have definitive dates. We can say, by this date, I want this many clients. By this date, I want to start my business. By this date, I want to be able to have taken my wife to, Europe or something, right? We can give ourselves some level of intention, right? Now, just because maybe you give yourself an intention and it doesn't follow through, it doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you have to adjust. And so we pivot. I have talked about this on the podcast before. I believe there's a whole blog and a whole episode on pivoting, where if something doesn't go your way, you pivot. And yet, many people, what happens in the year as a whole is that when something happens, a negative typically, or obstacle, some level of trouble, instead of pivoting, they stop. They allow the circumstance to define what they are doing or what they will do. Nothing, maybe. And so we have to go beyond our circumstances. We have to go beyond the goodness and the hardships and stuff like that. We have to just be consistent. Now, doing the wrong thing or walking in the wrong direction might feel as if you are doing something, right? Well, I'm walking, well, I'm doing this. And sure enough, it's not leading you to where you truly want to be. And I encourage people to find someone who has done what you want to do, mentor them. And from there, you can hopefully get closer to that goal. Now, as a mindset, though, you have to do a tremendous amount of work in order to, not only just do something, because anyone can be a parrot, anyone can just replicate what someone has done, right? We can look at Amazon drop shipping or something, right? When that was really big, everyone was just saying, okay, I'm going to drop ship, and people made money, right? But then eventually, it wasn't the case, right? Same thing with Airbnb. I said, oh, Airbnb is making all this money. And now all these Airbnb properties are losing money, right? And we're not all of them, but people are not so much going out anymore. Now, this is not to say that people will always stay indoors or that people won't travel. It's going to be some acclimating, coming soon. So people are going to acclimate to the current times. We have a newer president, or I mean, newer in the sense of the term, not so much of has he been in office or not, but we have a new type of government in a sense. It's very strict and it's, with immigration and policies and spending. So, we're going to see some changes in America, right? But then maybe you're not in America. Well, one of the things that America does, or, just as a stigma of America, is that it leads the way, in a sense, for the world to look at and say, okay, well, this is what America is doing. And not saying that every country is going to mimic what America is doing. It almost follows in line. It's like, like you have a leader of a classroom, you have a leader of a platoon, and it's like, okay, well, this is what they're doing. I guess this is what we do. You figure out very quickly if that's something you want to be a part long term. And if it's not, you get to jump ship. You get to have figured out maybe the things you have been doing have been beneficial to you. And you can say, I want to keep going the next 6 months doing this. Maybe now, July can be your January 1st. And you can say, I'm starting fresh. It's all a mindset when it comes to can you get that new aspect, that new year mentality? Because the new year mentality is literally just a new week, a new month, a new day, even if you want to break it down all the way to then. From there, you can say, I can make some big changes, but it doesn't happen by simply saying, all right, I'm going to do something different. Okay. Yeah, I'm giving myself this intention, but you're not deliberate in it, right? So you have to write down, you have to journal, you have to get a mentor or guide or someone to help you along the way, find some accountability. And then, of course, from there, be consistent, become disciplined. All of this is to say, the halfway point is just an opportunity for you to say, where have I been doing things right? And where have I been doing things that can use some improvement, right? Because it's not so much about always right or wrong. It's about if I'm doing something that is necessarily wrong for me, why or what is the benefit for me to continue what I'm doing? And there is no benefit for you to continue to do something that is not going to bring about a better living situation for you, a better circumstance for you. It is better for you to say, you know what, let me stop what I'm doing. Let me stop eating the pizza. Let me stop eating the donuts. And let me start giving myself deliberate, healthy mindsets and foods and nutrients that are going to bring about more in my life. It's not only about the spending. It's not only about, what you accomplish. It's about, the intention, the journey, how you're going to feel at the end of it. Because if you get every bit of your goal accomplished by the end of this year, at the end of the year, you feel emptier than you have ever felt in your life, we did something wrong. Because the goals that we give ourselves, they have to have some impact, some meaning that is more than just money, that is more than just status. It has to be something that's intrinsically going to light us up. And everyone's different. So we have to do the work. And I encourage people to check out this article again, Reflections at the Halfway Point, Navigating the Ups and Downs of the Year. The link is right down in the description box below. And this article is definitely just a brief summary or a brief overview of the things that we talked about today. I give a couple of different examples in the blog that you can leverage to get a deeper understanding of maybe where you are or where you need to be in the sense of by the end of the year. Now, even though we have about 6 months left, we might not be able to use all 6 months to 100% capacity. Maybe we might get 3 months or 4 months and we can squeeze the juice out of it and we do something good in those months, right? But that's a better idea than to wait 6 months for the new year in January. And many people, this is the mindset they give themselves subconsciously, not consciously. It's a subconscious mindset that they give themselves. Oh, I failed halfway through the year. And then what's the point? We're already halfway done about. I'll just start on January 1st. And literally you have 6 months of opportunity laying at, still in front of you. So let's give ourselves the intention for not only reflecting on the past, but to anticipate the future. Let's give ourselves the resources, whether they be continuing to listen to the podcast or to read more articles or to get a coach or a mentor or a guide or someone along the way to help us navigate to make these next 6 months the best months ever. And to understand that sometimes change is not going to be immediate. Sometimes it's going to take some time, but do the self-care, the self-inspection and figure out, where you need to be. You can do it with love. You can do it with, a fire and a vigor that might scare some people, but if you can make progress in the sense that you're not burning yourself out or hurt or harming yourself, where you're going to have detrimental effects at some point throughout the year where you break down or that you are going to maybe turn pessimistic in all the things that you do that are not going to bring about any level of meaning, then I encourage you to figure out what works for you to do what is not just comfortable, but what's going to stretch you enough that it's going to feel just enough for you, right? Because everyone has a different tolerance when it comes to change. Some people, they can tolerate a 180, and some people, they need a 10-degree slope and say, hey, let's go slow and steady. Depending on where you are, depending on who you are as a person, figure that out, do the work. You have 6 months left to make some massive impact. The year is not done yet. You are not done yet. You get to decide what you will accomplish in this year.